You are listening to HOA Checkmate. I wish this was exaggerated. Welcome. Settle in, because this one gets absolutely unhinged. I am standing in my driveway in Anchorage, Alaska at 7:30 in the morning, and the HOA enforcement coordinator is screaming at me about snow stakes. Not illegal parking, not a hazard. Snow stakes. The little reflective markers I put along my driveway edge so the plow guy does not clip my mailbox. She is 6 inches from my face, waving a measuring tape like a sword, telling me I have 72 hours to remove them, or she will fine me $300 and put a lien on my house. I am a paramedic. I work 12-hour shifts in weather that would make a polar bear call in sick. I moved to Beacon Hill Snowdrift Village because the HOA website promised low-drama living and reasonable snow removal standards. That was a lie. Her name is Tiffany Mitchell. She is the Fines and Enforcement Coordinator for the Beacon Hill Snowdrift Village Association, and she brags about her collections like she is running a protection racket. Blonde hair, shoulder length and wavy, pink belted wool coat, gray earmuffs, and a smile that could freeze Diesel. She has a portable folding sign stand that she keeps trying to place near my driveway with a notice about winter compliance. No readable text, but the threat is clear. She also carries a measuring tape everywhere, and she snaps it open like a challenge every time she wants to intimidate someone. Her catchphrase is, "If you make me repeat myself, it gets more expensive." She has said it to me twice already this week. What is at stake for me is simple. My driveway has a single narrow exit, and snow piles could trap me completely. If I cannot get out, I cannot get to the station. I cannot work. I cannot pay my mortgage. The HOA knows this. Tiffany knows this. She is using winter enforcement like a weapon, and I am her favorite target. The first sign of trouble was 2 weeks ago. I came home after an overnight shift and found a notice zip-tied to my mailbox. It said I was in violation of the snow emergency policy because my driveway snow pile extended beyond the property line. I checked. It did not. I measured. I took photos. I emailed the board with proof. Tiffany replied with a PDF of mystery winter surcharges, a passive-aggressive note about community standards, and a bill for $50 in administrative review fees. I paid it because I did not have the energy to fight. That was my mistake. Paying made me a mark. 3 days later, she sent another notice. This time it was about ice melt application. Apparently, I was required to use HOA-approved ice melt only, and the bag I bought at the hardware store did not have the right certification sticker. I did not even know we had approved ice melt. The covenant says nothing about it. I emailed again. She replied with a link to a board resolution from 2 years ago, buried on page 9 of a newsletter nobody reads. Another $50 fee for non-compliance review. I did not pay that one. 2 days after that, I woke up to find my truck blocked in by an orange traffic cone and a folding sign stand with a laminated notice. No readable text, but the message was clear. Tow zone. I moved the cone. Tiffany called me within 10 minutes. She told me I was interfering with HOA snow emergency operations and that if I touched HOA property again, she would have my vehicle towed and charge me for the labor. I asked her what snow emergency. She said, "If you make me repeat myself, it gets more expensive," and hung up. That brings us to this morning. I am in my driveway, trying to clear a path to my truck, and Tiffany pulls up in her SUV with the folding sign stand in the back. She gets out, slams the door, and marches over with the measuring tape already unrolled. She snaps it open and points it at my snow stakes. She says they are prohibited aesthetic alterations and that I installed them without board approval. I tell her they are safety markers, and the covenant allows temporary seasonal items. She says the board interprets seasonal items differently, and that snow stakes are permanent fixtures. I ask her to show me the rule. She says she does not have to educate me on policy, and that ignorance is not a defense. Then she says it again. If you make me repeat myself, it gets more expensive. I let her get the last word, because I wanted the last consequence. I do not say that out loud. I just nod, take a photo of her with my phone, and go inside. She yells after me that she is documenting my hostility and that the board will hear about my aggressive behavior. I close the door and start building my case. I have been keeping every email, every notice, every receipt since the first bogus fine. I have payment confirmations proving I was never delinquent despite their winter fee blast. I have photos with timestamps showing my snow piles were always within my property lines. I have my original covenant packet with no mention of approved ice melt or prohibited snow stakes. I also have something Tiffany does not know about yet, a sworn neighbor statement with photos that destroys her timeline. But I am not ready to play that card. Not yet. I call my buddy Derek. He lives 4 houses down, and he has been dealing with Tiffany longer than I have. He is a calm homeowner who brings the actual printed covenants and reads them out loud when the board tries to improvise rules. He is also the only person on the block who is not afraid of her. I tell him what just happened. He sighs and says, "She is doing the sign stand thing again. That is her move. She puts it on your property line, you move it, she calls it tampering, and then she fines you for obstruction. Do not touch it." I ask him if he has a copy of the original snow emergency resolution. He says he does, and it does not say anything about snow stakes. He also says Tiffany has been trying to call different tow drivers like she is speed dialing chaos, because the regular tow company stopped responding to her after she tried to have someone towed for parking in their own assigned spot during a non-emergency. He offers to come over and be a witness if she comes back. I tell him I will let him know. Then I get a text. It is from the HOA board group message. Tiffany has sent a mass notice to the whole neighborhood. It says that due to hazardous winter conditions, the board is declaring a limited snow emergency, and that all non-compliant vehicles and property alterations must be corrected within 24 hours or face immediate enforcement action. No specific address is named, but everyone knows it is about me. My phone starts buzzing. Neighbors asking what is going on. Neighbors saying they got the same notice last year and it was bogus. One person sends a screenshot of the city weather advisory page. No snow emergency. No hazard alert. Nothing. Tiffany just made it up. I screenshot everything and forward it to Derek. He replies, "That is fraud. You need to document this and file a complaint with the management company." I tell him I am already on it. Then my phone buzzes again. It is a call from a number I do not recognize. I answer. It is a tow truck driver. He says he got a call from the HOA about an unauthorized vehicle in a snow emergency zone, and he is trying to verify the address before he dispatches. I tell him there is no snow emergency and no unauthorized vehicle. He pauses, then says, "Yeah, I figured. She calls us a lot. We stopped hooking cars for her last month." He hangs up. 10 minutes later, Tiffany is back. This time she has a clipboard and a camera. She parks in the street, gets out, and starts taking photos of my truck, my driveway, my snow stakes, my mailbox, everything. She is crouched down, shooting from low angles, trying to make the snow piles look bigger. She moves closer to my property line, kneels in the snow, and takes a photo that makes it look like my snow is spilling into the common area. It is not. She is shooting from an angle 2 inches outside my line to create the illusion. I grab my phone and start recording her. She sees me in the window and flips. She marches up to my front door and starts pounding. I open it. She shoves the clipboard at me and says I am being cited for hazardous snow accumulation, unapproved driveway markers, failure to comply with emergency directives, and obstruction of HOA enforcement. The total fine is $850 due in 10 days, plus a $100 daily penalty if the violations are not corrected. I ask her where the emergency directive is posted. She says it was sent via text and email. I show her my phone. No email. No text. Just the group message she sent 20 minutes ago that does not mention my address. She says it is my responsibility to monitor communications and that failure to receive notice does not void the citation. I ask her if she contacted the city about the snow emergency. She says the HOA does not need city approval to enforce community standards. I ask her if she is aware that filing a false emergency report is illegal. She says I am twisting her words, and that if I continue to harass her, she will add a hostile conduct charge. Then she says it. I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink. I smile. I say, that is good. I am going to remember that. She does not like my tone. She snaps a photo of me standing in the doorway and says it is evidence of my non-compliance attitude. Then she gets in her SUV and drives off. I immediately forward the video to Derek, save a copy to cloud storage, and email the board with a formal complaint citing the false emergency declaration, the fraudulent photo staging, and the retaliation pattern. I CC the management company. I get an auto reply. The management company is closed for the weekend. Of course it is. That night, I get another email. It is from Tiffany, sent from her personal account, not the HOA address. It says that due to my continued non-compliance and aggressive behavior, the board has authorized a lien filing to secure payment of outstanding fines and fees. It includes a PDF of the lien notice with my name, my address, and a total balance of $1,200. The breakdown includes the original $50 fee I already paid, the $50 fee I disputed, the $850 citation from today, and $250 in legal preparation fees. I have never seen a legal preparation fee before. I Google it. It is not a real thing. It is a junk fee Tiffany invented. I call Derek. He is furious. He says she cannot file a lien without a board vote and a certified letter. This is intimidation. You need to respond in writing and dispute every charge. He also tells me that another neighbor, a delivery driver who got stuck at the curb last winter watching one of Tiffany's meltdowns, has been collecting evidence of her selective enforcement. The driver saw her yell at someone for shoveling snow onto the sidewalk, then ignore another homeowner doing the exact same thing 2 days later. He has dates, photos, and notes. Derek says he will ask the driver if he is willing to provide a statement. I draft a response email. I dispute every fee. I cite the covenant sections that allow seasonal markers. I attach the city weather page showing no snow emergency. I demand a formal hearing with the full board and a third-party mediator. I send it to the board, the management company, and Tiffany. Then I file a complaint with the Alaska HOA Ombudsman Office. It is late. I am exhausted. But I am not backing down. The next morning, I wake up to find the folding sign stand is back. This time, it is 3 feet inside my property line. Tiffany moved it overnight. I take photos, measure the distance from the line, and text Derek. He replies, "Do not touch it. Let her dig the hole deeper." I leave it where it is and go to work. When I get home that evening, there is a notice on my door. It says the board has scheduled an emergency compliance hearing for tomorrow night at 7. Attendance is mandatory. Failure to appear will result in automatic enforcement of all citations and immediate lien filing. I text Derek. He says he will be there. He also says the delivery driver agreed to provide a statement and will attend as a witness. The hearing is held in the community center, a small room with folding chairs and a long table where the board sits. Tiffany is at the head of the table with a stack of papers and that same clipboard. There are 4 other board members, all looking uncomfortable. I recognize 2 of them from neighborhood events. They are not enforcers. They are just people who wanted to help with landscaping decisions and got roped into this mess. Derek is sitting in the back with a folder. The delivery driver is next to him, wearing his work uniform and holding a phone. Tiffany starts the meeting by reading the charges. Hazardous snow accumulation, unapproved driveway markers, failure to comply with emergency directives, obstruction of HOA enforcement, hostile conduct. She shows the photos she took, the ones shot from 2 inches outside my property line. She does not mention that detail. She says my snow piles are a liability, and my refusal to remove the stakes is willful defiance. She says the board has a duty to protect property values, and that my attitude is damaging community trust. Then she opens the floor for my response, but she cuts my microphone. Literally. There is a small PA system for recorded meetings, and she reaches over and switches off my mic before I can speak. I stand up and say, out loud, that I have documentation proving every charge is false. She interrupts and says I am out of order. I pull out my phone and show the timestamp photos of my snow piles within my property line. She says photos can be manipulated and are not admissible without third-party verification. I show the city weather page proving there was no snow emergency. She says the city and the HOA have different standards, and that the board has the authority to declare internal emergencies. Derek stands up. He says, I have the original covenants right here, and there is no provision for internal snow emergencies or prohibited seasonal markers. Tiffany snaps at him and says he is not a party to this hearing and needs to sit down. He does not sit. He walks up to the table and places the covenant packet in front of the other board members. One of them, an older guy named Ron, picks it up and starts reading. Tiffany tries to move on, but Ron interrupts. He says, Tiffany, this does not say anything about snow stakes. Where is the resolution you are citing? Tiffany stammers. She says it was passed 2 years ago and is on file. Ron says, I have been on this board for 4 years and I do not remember that vote. Show me the meeting minutes. Tiffany pulls out a piece of paper and slides it across the table. Ron reads it, frowns, and says, this is not a board resolution. This is a memo you sent to the landscaping committee. It was never voted on. The room goes silent. If you are enjoying this level of HOA chaos, smash that like button and subscribe, because it only gets wilder from here. Tiffany recovers fast. She says the memo was distributed to all homeowners and that failure to object constitutes implied approval. Ron says that is not how HOA governance works. Another board member, a woman named Janet, says, I never saw that memo. Tiffany insists it was sent. Derek pulls out his phone and says, I have every email the board has sent in the last 3 years. There is no memo about snow stakes. Want me to pull up the archive? Tiffany changes tactics. She says the snow stakes are still a visual nuisance, and that the board has discretion to enforce aesthetic standards. Ron says they are reflective markers for snow safety. Half the block has them. Why are we targeting this one homeowner? Tiffany does not answer. She shuffles her papers and says we need to move on to the fines assessment. Ron says, we are not assessing anything until we sort out what rules actually exist. Then the delivery driver stands up. He says, I have a statement. Tiffany tells him to sit down. He ignores her. He says, I was here last February when you tried to have Mrs. Callahan towed for parking in her own driveway during a snow emergency you made up. I watched you take pictures of her car from the street and then call 3 different tow companies until one agreed to come out. The driver showed up, looked at the paperwork, and left because there was no actual violation. You billed her anyway for the call-out fee. Tiffany turns red. She says that is hearsay. The driver says, I have the dispatch logs. I called the tow company after and asked for a copy because I thought it was shady. They sent it to me. He pulls out his phone and shows the screen. I can see a PDF with a company logo and a timestamp. He says, it shows you called 4 times in 6 minutes and that the driver refused the hook because the authorization paperwork did not match the story. Ron looks at Tiffany. He says, is that true? Tiffany says, I do not have to justify enforcement decisions to non-board members. Ron says, you are not answering the question. Janet says, I want to see those logs. The driver forwards the file to the board email address. Tiffany tries to shut it down. She says the hearing is about my violations, not her enforcement record. Ron says, if your enforcement record is part of a pattern of retaliation, it is absolutely relevant. Then I play my trump card. I say, I have something else. I pull out a printout. It is a sworn neighbor statement with photos that destroys Karen's timeline. The neighbor is an elderly woman named Phyllis, who lives directly across from me. She has a doorbell camera that faces the street. She saw Tiffany move the folding sign stand onto my property at 11 at night 2 days ago. She has the video. She also has video of Tiffany taking the staged photos from outside my property line. Phyllis could not make it to the meeting, but she signed a notarized statement and gave me permission to share the footage. I present it as a timeline, so the facts are undeniable, even to people who hate drama. I pull up the video on my phone and cast it to the TV mounted on the wall. The board watches in silence. The first clip shows Tiffany pulling up in her SUV at 11:04, getting out with the folding sign stand, walking onto my property, and placing it 3 feet past the line. The second clip shows her kneeling in the snow the next morning, angling her phone to make my snow pile look bigger. The timestamp matches the photos she submitted to the board. Ron says, "This is tampering." Janet says, "This is fraud." Tiffany stands up and says, "That footage is inadmissible without my consent." Ron says, "It is a doorbell camera on private property facing a public street. It is completely admissible." He looks at me and says, "Do you have copies of this?" I say, "I have copies, backups, and I already sent them to the management company and the ombudsman office." Tiffany loses it. She slams her hand on the table and says, "You do not get to ambush me with fabricated evidence and hostile witnesses. I did my job. I enforced the rules. If you people do not have the spine to back me up, then this association is going to collapse into chaos." Ron says, "The only chaos here is the chaos you created." Janet says, "I move to suspend all citations against this homeowner pending a full board review and other member seconds." Tiffany says, "You cannot do that without my recommendation." Ron says, "Watch us." The motion passes, 3-1. Tiffany is the only no vote. She grabs her clipboard and storms out. On her way, she says, "This is not over. I will bury you in notices until you run out of printer ink." Derek laughs out loud. He says, "You already said that. It did not work the first time." After the meeting, Ron pulls me aside. He says, "I owe you an apology. I did not know she was doing this. A lot of us did not know. She handles enforcement on her own, and we just trusted her." I tell him I appreciate that, but trust is not an excuse for abuse. He nods. He says the board is going to open an investigation into all of Tiffany's enforcement actions over the past 2 years, and that they are bringing in the management company to audit the fees. He also says they are going to vote on her removal at the next meeting. I thank him and leave. Derek walks out with me. He says, "You just killed her credibility. She is done." I say, "Not yet. She still has the lien threat and the tow companies on speed dial. She is going to try something desperate." Derek says, "Let her. You have everything documented. She cannot win." He is right, but he is also wrong. Tiffany does not care about winning. She cares about punishment. 2 days later, I get a text from an unknown number. It is a photo of my truck with a tow truck parked behind it. The message says, "Hook authorized. Stand by for removal." I run outside. The tow truck is idling in the street. The driver is standing next to my truck with a clipboard, looking confused. I ask him what is going on. He says he got a call from the HOA about an unauthorized vehicle in a restricted zone. I show him my registration, my HOA dues receipt, and the board email suspending all citations. He looks at the paperwork, then at me, then at his phone. He says, "Yeah, this does not match. I am not hooking this." Then Tiffany pulls up. She gets out of her SUV with the measuring tape and a folder full of papers. She marches over and says, "That vehicle is in violation of snow emergency parking restrictions and needs to be removed immediately." The driver says, "There is no snow emergency posted." I checked with the city before I came out. Tiffany says, "The HOA declared an internal emergency." The driver says, "I do not hook cars for internal emergencies. I need city authorization or a police standby." Tiffany opens the folder and pulls out a tow authorization slip. No readable text, but she is waving it like it is a warrant. She says, "This is signed by the board president and authorized by the enforcement coordinator." That is me. Hook the vehicle now, or I will report you for refusal of service. The driver says, "I am not hooking anything until I talk to my dispatch." He walks back to his truck and makes a call. I pull out my phone and start recording. Tiffany sees me and flips. She says, "You are recording me without my consent. That is illegal." I say, "Alaska is a one-party consent state, and we are in public. Keep talking." She steps closer and says, You think you are so smart. You think you won. You have no idea what I am going to do to you. I say, go ahead. Say it on camera. The driver comes back. He says, my dispatch talked to the HOA management company. There is no authorized tow. This call is canceled. Tiffany says, I am the enforcement coordinator. I authorized it. The driver says, the management company overruled you. If you want to dispute it, take it up with them. He gets in his truck and drives off. Tiffany turns to me. She is shaking. She says, you are going to regret this. I am filing a harassment complaint. I am filing a restraining order. I am going to make sure you never feel safe in this neighborhood again. I say, that sounds like a threat. She says it is a promise. Then she gets in her SUV and peels out, tires spinning on the snow. I forward the video to Ron, Derek, the management company, and my attorney. Yes, I hired an attorney. After the lien threat, I called a lawyer who specializes in HOA disputes. Her name is Amanda. She is sharp, no nonsense, and she does not like bullies. I sent her everything: the emails, the photos, the videos, the sworn statement, the fake lien notice, the tow attempt. She reviewed it all and said, this is textbook harassment and possibly fraud. We can go after her personally and the board for negligent oversight. I am going to draft a demand letter. The letter arrives 3 days later. It is addressed to the Beacon Hill Snowdrift Village Association Board and copied to Tiffany Mitchell personally. It demands immediate retraction of all citations, removal of the fraudulent lien notice, a full refund of all disputed fees including the $50 administrative review charges, a written apology, and a binding agreement that Tiffany will have no further enforcement contact with me. It also demands that the board implement third-party oversight of all future enforcement actions, and that Tiffany be removed from her role pending an independent audit. The letter includes a deadline, 10 business days. If the board does not comply, we file in small claims court and pursue damages for harassment, emotional distress, and abuse of process. The board folds in 4 days. Ron calls me personally. He says the board voted to accept all terms. Tiffany is being removed from the enforcement coordinator role effective immediately. The lien notice is void. All disputed fees will be refunded within 30 days. The board is hiring a neutral third-party management company to handle all future violations, and Tiffany is being told to step down from the board entirely. If she refuses, the board will call a special election to remove her. I asked Ron what Tiffany said when they told her. He says she tried to spin it. She said you manipulated the board with false evidence and outside legal pressure. She said the board was caving to a bully. Then Janet showed her the doorbell footage again and asked her to explain why she was on your property at 11 at night moving HOA equipment. Tiffany said it was part of her enforcement duties. Janet said trespassing is not an enforcement duty. Tiffany walked out. She sent a resignation email an hour later. She is done. I thank Ron and hang up. Then I call Amanda and tell her the news. She says, good. Now we make sure they actually follow through. I am going to send a follow-up letter confirming the settlement terms and requiring written proof of the refund and the policy changes. If they backslide, we file immediately. They do not backslide. 2 weeks later, I receive a check for $150, a formal letter from the board retracting all citations, and a copy of the new enforcement policy requiring third-party review of all fines over $50. The letter also includes a no-contact directive barring Tiffany from any communication with me regarding HOA matters. Violations of the directive will result in penalties up to $500 per incident. But the real payoff comes a month later. I am at the mailbox when Derek walks over with a huge grin. He says, "You are not going to believe this. Tiffany tried to file a complaint with the Ombudsman office, claiming the board violated her due process rights by forcing her to resign. The Ombudsman reviewed her complaint and then reviewed all the evidence we submitted, the doorbell footage, the fake emergency declarations, the tow attempts, everything. They sent the board a formal findings letter, It says Tiffany engaged in selective enforcement, abuse of authority, and retaliation. It also says the board failed in its oversight duties and needs to implement mandatory training and third-party audits. The Ombudsman copied the state HOA regulatory office. Tiffany is now flagged in the state system. She cannot serve on any HOA board in Alaska without disclosure of the findings. Derek shows me the letter on his phone. I read it twice. Then I see the kicker. The Ombudsman also recommended that the board pursue recovery of any fees Tiffany collected improperly. The board voted to do it. They are going after her personally for the junk fees she invented, the fake legal preparation charges, and the administrative review scams. The total is over $4,000 across a dozen homeowners. If she does not pay, they are filing a civil suit. I asked Derek if Tiffany knows yet. He says, oh, she knows. She showed up at Ron's house last night and tried to argue with him on his porch. Ron told her to leave or he would call the police. She called him a coward and said the board betrayed her. Ron said, you betrayed the community. Then he closed the door. She stood there for 10 minutes yelling at his house before she finally left. Someone recorded it and posted it in the neighborhood group. It is the most satisfying thing I have ever seen. A week later, I am shoveling my driveway when a car pulls up. It is a woman I do not recognize. She gets out and introduces herself as the new enforcement liaison from the third-party management company. She is polite, professional, and she has a tablet instead of a clipboard. She says she is doing a courtesy walkthrough of the neighborhood to introduce herself and answer any questions about the new policy. I ask her how it works. She says all violations now require photo documentation, a written notice with a 7-day correction window, and board approval before any fine is assessed. Homeowners can appeal to the management company, and all appeals are reviewed by a neutral party. No more one-person enforcement. No more surprise fees. I tell her that sounds reasonable. She says, that is the goal. We have heard about the issues here, and we are committed to making this a fair process. She also says that if I ever feel like I am being targeted or retaliated against, I can contact her directly, and she will investigate. I thank her and she leaves. For the first time in months, I feel like I can breathe. But I am not naive. I know Tiffany is still out there. I know she is angry. I know she is the type to hold a grudge. So I keep my evidence organized. I keep my camera ready. I keep my attorney on speed dial. And I keep my snow stakes exactly where they are, reflective and visible, because they are legal, and she cannot do a damn thing about it. 2 months later, I am loading my gear into my truck before a shift when I see a car I do not recognize parked across the street. The driver is taking pictures of my house. I walk over and knock on the window. The driver rolls it down. It is a guy in a polo shirt with a contractor logo. He says, sorry, I am with a property inspection company. We were hired to do a compliance audit for the HOA. I ask him who requested it. He checks his tablet and says, the management company. It is part of the new policy. Random audits to make sure everyone is up to code. I ask him if he needs anything from me. He says no, just exterior photos for the records. You are all clear. No violations. I thank him and he drives off. I text Derek and tell him what happened. He says, that is the new system. They are doing it for everyone. It is actually fair now. No targeting. No favoritism. Just random checks. It feels weird. Fair feels weird. But I will take it. Spring comes. The snow melts. The stakes come down. I store them in the garage for next year. The HOA does not contact me. Tiffany does not contact me. The board sends a newsletter thanking everyone for their patience during the policy transition and announcing that violations are down 60% since the new management company took over. They also announced that they are refunding all disputed fees collected over the past 2 years and that homeowners who believe they were overcharged can submit a claim form. Over 20 people file claims. The total refund exceeds $6,000. The board has to dip into reserves to cover it. In June, I see Tiffany at the grocery store. She is in the produce section, picking through apples. She sees me and freezes. I do not say anything. I just nod and keep walking. She does not follow. She does not yell. She does not pull out a measuring tape. She just stands there, holding an apple, looking small. A few weeks later, Derek texts me a link. It is a local news story about HOA reform legislation being introduced in the state Senate. The bill would require mandatory third-party oversight for all enforcement actions, cap administrative fees, and create a state-level complaint process for homeowners. The bill is sponsored by a senator who used to live in an HOA and dealt with similar abuse. The article quotes him saying, "Homeowners should not have to hire lawyers to fight their own neighbors over snow stakes." Derek adds, "That is us. We are the reason this is happening. I do not know if the bill will pass. I do not know if it will change anything. But I know that the HOA stopped selective enforcement after complaints piled up. I know that Tiffany was told to step down, and she could not spin it. I know that a lawyer letter forced a retraction and a refund. And I know that Sharon with no notice called it a snow emergency, and the city notice disproved it. That summer, I am sitting on my porch with a beer when a moving truck pulls up at Tiffany's house. I watch as movers load furniture, boxes, and that stupid folding sign stand into the truck. She is leaving. Derek walks over and sits down next to me. He says, "Good riddance." I say, "Yeah." He says, "You won." I say, "We all won. The whole neighborhood won." He clinks his beer against mine, and we sit there in silence, watching the truck pull away. A month later, the new neighbor moves in. She is a teacher. She has a dog. She waves when she sees me. No clipboard. No measuring tape. No threats. Just a wave. It feels like a different place. In August, I get an email from Amanda, my attorney. She says the board settlement is fully executed. All refunds have been processed, and the case is officially closed. She also says that if I ever need help again, I should call, but she hopes I never do. I thank her and close the email. Then I delete every HOA notice, every threatening message, every bogus citation from my files. I keep the evidence just in case, but I do not look at it. In September, the HOA holds its annual meeting. I attend. So does Derek. So does the delivery driver. So does Phyllis, the neighbor with the doorbell camera. The new enforcement liaison is there. The management company rep is there. Ron is still on the board. Janet is still on the board. Tiffany is not. The meeting is boring. They talk about landscaping. They talk about the budget. They talk about the upcoming snow season and the updated snow removal policy. No emergency declarations. No prohibited markers. No surprise fees. Just a clear written policy that applies to everyone equally. At the end of the meeting, Ron stands up and says, "I want to acknowledge that this past year was difficult. We made mistakes. We allowed one person to abuse her authority, and it hurt a lot of people. We are committed to making sure that never happens again. If you ever feel like you are being treated unfairly, please reach out. We are here to serve the community, not control it." People clap. It is not a standing ovation. It is just polite applause, but it feels genuine. After the meeting, Phyllis pulls me aside. She says, "I heard you are the one who stood up to Tiffany." I say, "A lot of people stood up." She says, "But you were the one who did not back down. Thank you." I tell her I could not have done it without her footage. She smiles and says, "Any time." October comes. The first snow falls. I put the reflective stakes back along my driveway. No one says anything. No notices. No photos. No threats. The plow guy comes through and misses my mailbox by 6 inches. The stakes did their job. In November, I am walking to my truck when I see the folding sign stand in someone's trash pile at the curb. It is beat up, the hinges are broken, and the laminated notice is gone. I do not know who threw it out or how it ended up there, but seeing it in the trash feels like the final punctuation mark on the whole nightmare. Derek texts me a photo of it with the caption, "End of an era." I reply, Good riddance. He sends back a laughing emoji. December rolls around. The neighborhood group chat is quiet. No emergency declarations. No enforcement blasts. Just normal stuff. Lost dog posts. Recommendations for snow removal services. Someone selling a couch. It is boring. It is peaceful. It is exactly what an HOA should be. On Christmas Eve, I am shoveling my driveway when the new neighbor, the teacher, walks over with a plate of cookies. She says, "I heard you went through a lot with the old board. I just wanted to say thank you for making this a better place to live." I tell her it was a team effort. She says, "Still, it matters." She hands me the cookies and walks back to her house. I stand there in the cold, holding a plate of cookies, and I realize something. I am not angry anymore. I am not on edge. I am not checking my phone every 5 minutes for the next bogus notice. I am just a guy shoveling his driveway on Christmas Eve. And that is enough. In January, I get a message from the state ombudsman office. It is a form letter thanking me for my cooperation in their investigation and informing me that the findings have been forwarded to the regulatory office for review. It also says that my complaint was one of 12 filed against the same enforcement coordinator, and that the pattern of abuse led to policy recommendations that are now being considered at the state level. The letter ends with, "Your willingness to stand up made a difference. Thank you." I print the letter and file it with the rest of the evidence. Not because I think I will need it, but because I want to remember. I want to remember that fighting back works. I want to remember that bullies can be stopped. I want to remember that one person with a camera, a lawyer, and a refusal to back down can change an entire system. In February, a year after the nightmare started, I am sitting in my truck waiting for my shift to start when I get a call from Ron. He says, "I wanted to give you a heads up. The state just passed the HOA reform bill. It goes into effect in 90 days. Mandatory third-party oversight, fee caps, complaint process. The whole thing. We are already in compliance because of the changes we made last year, but a lot of other associations are scrambling. You helped make this happen." I thank him and hang up. Then I sit there for a minute, letting it sink in. The bill passed. The system changed. The fight mattered. That night, Derek and I grab drinks at a bar near the station. He raises his glass and says, "To snow stakes and doorbell cameras." I raise mine and say, "To people who do not back down." We drink. We laugh. We talk about normal stuff, work and weather and weekend plans. The HOA does not come up. It does not need to. In March, I am walking into the station when I see a news van parked outside. A reporter is interviewing someone about the new HOA law. I do not stop to watch. I do not need to. I know the story. I lived it. In April, the management company sends an email announcing that the HOA has been recertified under the new state standards, and that all homeowners are invited to a town hall to discuss the updated policies. I do not go. I trust the process now. I trust that if something goes wrong, there is a system to fix it. That is enough. In May, I am cleaning out the garage when I find the old HOA notices buried in a box. I flip through them one more time. The fake emergency declarations, the bogus fines, the lien threat, the tow authorization. All of it printed on official letterhead. All of it signed by Tiffany Mitchell, Fines and Enforcement Coordinator. I take the whole stack outside and drop it in the recycling bin. It feels good. In June, I run into Ron at the hardware store. He is buying mulch. I am buying a new snow shovel for next winter. He says, "You getting ready already?" I say, "Learn my lesson. Be prepared." He laughs. Then he says, "You know, you changed this place. A lot of people were scared to speak up before. You showed them it was possible." I tell him I just did not want to get screwed over. He says that is all it takes sometimes. One person who refuses to get screwed over. We shake hands and go our separate ways. In July, I am at a barbecue at Derek's place when someone asks me about the HOA fight. I give them the short version. Crazy board member, fake fines, lawyer letter, she got removed. Board reformed. State passed a law. They say, damn, that is wild. I say, yeah. Then we go back to eating burgers and talking about the Mariners. It does not define me anymore. It is just a thing that happened. In August, I get an email from Amanda. She is forwarding me an article from a legal journal about HOA abuse and reform. The article cites the Alaska case, the one involving Tiffany and the Beacon Hill Snowdrift Village Association, as a key example of how homeowner advocacy can drive systemic change. My name is not in the article, but I know it is about me. Amanda writes, "Thought you would want to see this. You are a case study now." Congrats. I read the article. It is dry, academic, full of legal terms and citations. But the conclusion is clear. Individual homeowners have more power than they think, and when they organize and document abuse, they can win. I saved the article and sent a copy to Derek. In September, the second annual meeting under the new system takes place. I attend again. This time the room is full. People are engaged. People ask questions. The board answers them. The management company rep explains the audit results. Everything is above board. Everything is transparent. It is boring in the best way. At the end of the meeting, a new homeowner stands up and asks what happened to the old enforcement coordinator. Ron says she resigned and is no longer affiliated with the association. The new homeowner says, "Good." A few people laugh. Ron does not scold them. He just nods and moves on. In October, the snow comes early. I put my stakes out. The plow guy waves as he drives by. No drama. No notices. No problems. In November, I am scrolling through my phone when I see a post in a national HOA horror story group. Someone is asking for advice about a board member who is abusing enforcement power. I type out a reply. I tell them to document everything, get a lawyer if needed, check their state laws, and do not back down. I tell them it is winnable. I tell them I know, because I did it. The person replies, "Thank you. That gives me hope." I close the app and go back to my life. In December, I am putting up Christmas lights when the teacher neighbor walks over. She says her HOA back in Oregon was a nightmare and that she moved here partly because she heard this one was better now. She asks what changed. I tell her the short version. She says, "That is amazing. You are a legend." I say, "Not really, just stubborn." She laughs and says, "Same thing." On New Year's Eve, I am sitting on my porch watching fireworks over the city when Derek texts me. He says 1 year since we took her down. Cheers to that. I text back, cheers. Then I sit there in the cold, drinking a beer, thinking about everything that happened. The fights, the fear, the victories, the reform. It was worth it. In January, the second winter under the new system, I get exactly 0 HOA notices. My driveway is clear. My stakes are up. My truck is parked legally. Everything is fine. It is boring. It is perfect. In February, I am loading my gear when a guy I do not recognize walks up. He says, "Are you the guy who fought the HOA?" I say, "Yeah." He says, "I just moved here and I was reading the meeting minutes online." That is insane. Good for you. I thank him and he walks off. People know the story now. It is part of the neighborhood lore. The guy who stood up to the enforcement coordinator and won. The guy who changed the system. I do not mind. It is better than being the guy who got buried in fake fines. In March, I am at a training seminar for work when someone asks what I do in my free time. I almost say fight HOAs, but I stop myself. Because I do not fight HOAs anymore. I just live in a neighborhood that works. That is the real victory. Not the confrontation. Not the revenge. The peace. In April, I get a letter from the management company. It is the annual compliance report. My property is listed as fully compliant. No violations. No warnings. No fees. I file the letter and move on. In May, 2 years after the nightmare started, I am sitting in my truck waiting for a call when I realize I have not thought about Tiffany in weeks. She used to occupy so much space in my head. Now she is just a name, a bad memory, a cautionary tale. I hope she learned something. I hope she got help. I hope she is not doing the same thing to someone else in another neighborhood. But I do not know. And I do not need to know. She is not my problem anymore. In June, the state releases a report on the first year of the HOA reform law. Complaints are down. Homeowner satisfaction is up. Abusive enforcement actions have dropped by 40%. The report credits the law with creating accountability and transparency. It does not mention me, but I know I am part of that statistic. I am one of the data points that proved the system was broken and needed to change. I print the report and file it with the rest of the evidence. Not because I need it. Because I want to remember that change is possible, that standing up works, that one person with a phone, a lawyer, and the refusal to be intimidated can move the needle. In July, I am mowing my lawn when the new board president, a guy named Mike who was elected in the spring, walks over. He says, "I wanted to thank you personally. A lot of the reforms we have now, the transparency, the third-party oversight, the fee caps, they came out of what you went through. You made this place better." I tell him I appreciate that, but it was not just me. He says, "I know, but you were the one who would not quit. That matters." We shake hands, and he walks back to his yard. That night, I am sitting on the porch with a beer, same as I was 2 years ago, but everything is different. The stakes are up. The snow is gone. The HOA is quiet. The neighborhood is peaceful. I am not fighting anymore. I am just living. And that is exactly what I fought for. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.